Hey folks, welcome back. I'm David and we're here in my shop where I build E-War guitars. This is going to be episode number 3 of my journey into learning how to use a CNC machine to build a guitar. And we're building this guitar right here. It's going to be sort of a telly-ish guitar. It's going to have a set neck, it's got P90s in it. It's going to be a real cool guitar when it's done. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun so far. I've never used a CNC machine before. So I am doing it all in this video series right here, starting to learn how to use it. Learn how to use the machine itself, learn how to use the software that runs the machine, and I'm learning how to use the design software to design a guitar on the computer. I've never done that before either. I've always done it by hand before. Anyway, it's been a real cool journey for me. I'm really enjoying it. And if you think you might be interested in something like that, how about you stick around and check it out? And if you like it, how about you give me a like and subscribe? Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the video. Okay, so we're in good shape. We're really nicely surfaced on both sides. We got a perfect thickness everywhere. It's a little over 1.13/16. I was hoping for a little bit thicker than that, but that's what we wound up with by the time I got it all planed and cut down nice. So one of the next things I want to do with this is I want to saw this top off. I'm going to take about 3/8 off of the top of this. We'll resurface both of those surfaces, and then I'll glue it back on after I chamber the body. Because this is maple and it is a heavy chunk of wood right here. So I'm going to go ahead and chamber the body, which I planned on doing from the beginning. So before I saw that top off, I'm going to go ahead and drill my 4 alignment pins in this thing right now on the CNC machine. And I just finished the V-carve G-code files for that, and I've loaded it on my little thumb drive here. So anyway, so before I saw the top off, I'm going to go ahead and drill those alignment pins, so when I go to put the top back on later, I have perfect alignment of everything. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get set up over there in the CNC machine. We're going to stick this down and we're going to drill away. So I've really discovered I really like setting up that fence as a guide for me, gluing these slabs of wood down on top of that CNC machine. It just helps out things a lot. Now I'm going to use the super glue trick. So I put a little bit of tape on the back of the body blank and I flip it over so I can then mark onto the CNC spoil board exactly where that tape is. So that way I can align the tape on the spoil board in exact alignment with the tape on the back of the body blank. I just check it out to make sure I didn't use the wrong mark. And so I'm putting a little medium super glue down on top, CA glue, and I'll spray the back of that body blank with the accelerator. That way you hold it down for a few seconds and it sticks. And that stuff sticks really good. I don't get any movement out of that whatsoever. So whenever I'm aligning the XY axis, I put in my 30-degree angled V-bit, which helps me align the center perfectly. Then once it's aligned on the XY axis, I'll put in the actual bit I'm going to use. In this case, it's a 1/4 inch up spiral. And I set the Z axis, which is the height, with that touch plate. And I just pull up the G code that I'm going to use for drilling these holes and drill away. It's amazing to me how accurate and repeatable this machine is. If you set it up right, you just redo the same G code and it comes out perfect every time. So now that I've got my alignment pins in place, I can go ahead and saw the face of this off, because I've got to chamber this body. That thing weighs a ton. And so I want to chamber it and also do all my wire routes in it too. So I'm just setting up my bandsaw. I check everything. That board, that piece I'm going to resaw is 14 inches tall, basically. So I want to make sure that that blade is perfectly perpendicular to the fence and to the table. And then I'm going to really take my time making this cut. This is like sped up 3 times, plus I'm cutting most of it out, but I might have spent 5 minutes or more cutting through this board. I went exceedingly slow. But it came out really nice in the end. That's a good sharp blade. That's a Timberwolf blade, which are very good. And it came out really nice. Came out really well. So now I'm going to go flatten both of those surfaces back off, and my drum sander here will do 16 inches wide. So that'll take this whole piece And I mark on there to see the highs and lows because I don't want to take off any more than I absolutely have to. This body's already coming out a little bit thinner than I wanted it. You know, normal for an electric guitar is around 1 3/4 inches, and this will probably finish up a little over 1 5/8 inches. So it's a bit under what a standard electric guitar is. But I kind of wanted to do a thin one anyway, so those parts are all set to go now. So now it's time to set up the tool paths to cut the chambers and the wire routes in the body. So I drew, you can see the 2 chambers in this drawing, and I drew those in Adobe Illustrator and imported them into this drawing. Now I'm going to go through and set up the tool paths, which included in that is setting up the bits you use. I'm bringing in the 1-inch surfacing bit, which I'm going to use to remove most of that material. Then I want to set up the speeds of that bit, so I set it at a very slow pace because I'm just not that confident with myself. And now I'm going to set up the numbers of passes, which I did about 1/8 of an inch per pass. I set for ramp in on the plunge, which is important when you're using a big bit like that. Now I'm going to go through and calculate the tool paths and have a look. So here it shows the tool path on the piece of wood, and it's cut out, and that's what you should see when it's done. Although in my case it will not cut all the way through the material, but that's the shape I'll wind up with. So then I rename the tool path something that I can remember later, and then save it to a file. I put it on my little thumb drive and take it off to the CNC machine to run it. Okay, so I'm going to cut the weight relief cavities in this body. I'm going to do one on each side. I just drew it on V-carve and I sent the tool paths over. Now for this particular thing, since we're clearing such a large area, I'm first going to cut the perimeter outside with this. This is a 1/4 inch up spiral end mill. And I'm also going to use this 1-inch surfacing bit, which once I've completed the perimeter with this, I'll change out the bits and run the clearing tool path, what it's called, with this 1-inch bit. So I'm a little nervous about this, but let's go ahead and do it. First thing I got to do is I got to switch out and put my 30-degree bit back in here, reestablish the center line, and then we'll switch the bits back out, do my Z, which is the height, and we'll start cutting away. Incidentally, now you can see that I have my my fixture down, my alignment fixture, and I've got this body, the back of the body is mounted on those alignment pins, and I'm just holding it down with these 2 clamps here to make sure it doesn't lift or anything. So anyway, let me swap out this bit and let's get rolling with this. So one thing I've learned is to, each time I go to shut off the machine, I need to center the bit back up in its home position. That way next time I turn the machine on, it is already in that position, and that is at 0, 0, and I don't have to go through this process each time. So part of the learning curve. I'm learning. You do have to set up the Z each time with that touch plate though, because material thickness is different and all that. So I've got this sped way up, but the speeds that we're actually going at, I think I have it at 60 inches per minute, which I think is still probably a little bit too fast for my taste. One of the biggest learning things on this machine, I believe, is the feeds and speeds, which is bit speed, how fast it travels through the machine, and things like this. Now right here I came across a mistake that I made when I did the G-code. I didn't do a ramp in, and that bit sank down in that wood and just kind of stopped dead. So I had to go back and rewrote the code for it, and made sure I had a ramp in on the start of that tool path, and then it worked fine. I checked it again to make sure it was going good, and I was satisfied, so I started back at the beginning and I ran it again, and this time it worked out fine. Just something I got to really be careful of looking for when I'm setting up these tool paths. to make sure I have all the boxes checked, and I put in all the information that I'm going to need. Part of the learning curve. After that, it went smoothly. I got it cut to the full depth, and I think chambering this body without the couple little hiccups I had would probably take about 20 minutes, which is a lot faster than if I did it with the templates and my router. So there it is. There, the body chambering is done, and it came out really well. And I wish I would have measured the blank before I did this and after, but I didn't. But I could tell you it definitely took out a good bit of weight. I bet it took out, I don't know, 1.5 pounds or maybe even 2 pounds out of the thing. Anyway, so I'm getting very close to where I can glue this top on here. And there's a couple things I still want to do. Now let me explain something. So I started out with only a 2-inch thick wood when I started, and of course I wanted to saw off the top. And so by the time I got these boards surface flattened and run through my planer over there and got them all straightened up, and then sawed off the top and then flattened both these two surfaces back out so they meet together nice, I wound up with a blank that is in total 1 5/8 of an inch thick, which, as most of you know, that's about 1/8 under a standard electric guitar body thickness, which is usually about 1 3/4, which is cool because I've always wanted to make one a little bit thinner. I always thought they were a little thick to me. I always thought guitar bodies, electric guitar bodies, were a bit thick. But anyway, so I've got the chance to do it now, and so I'm at 1 5/8 thick, and that poses a couple of kind of minor problems, but not problems, but things I'm going to have to take care of. And one of them is, this is a Switchcraft 3-way blade switch. Actually, this is a 5, but I'm going to be using a 3 in this guitar. And they're physically the same, so that doesn't really matter. But the deal about this is you need a total of 1 3/8 of an inch of cavity depth to fit one of these switches in there. And so if I have a body that is in total 1 5/8 of an inch thick, that only gives me a 1/4 inch of play. And I've got this top, which at this moment is 5/16 of an inch thick, and my back cavity cover is, when I do it, is going to be about 1/4 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit under 1/4 of an inch. So I've run out of room to fit this switch in there. So one thing that I do that when something like this happens is I like to go to the back of the top basically, and I will cut little recesses in the back of the top, and I usually do it with a drill and a chisel and stuff like that, but since I have a CNC machine, I want to do it on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my recesses in for both my switch and my potentiometers too, because these are the short shaft potentiometers, and a 5/16 of an inch thick top is just too thick for me to get the nut on the outside of this thing, and so I'm going to have to thin it down for that too. So I went over the V-carve and I drew a toolpath that is going to cut me these recesses in the back of this top, and I figured I'll go ahead and do it now where I'm working on a nice flat surface rather than reaching that CNC machine down inside the control cavity once the top is put on the back. So, and the other thing we have to do too, which I'll show you that too, is we've got to do our wire routes in the back part of the body. So we're going to set up and do that as well, so we can get our bridge ground and our pickup wires into this control cavity over here. Anyway, so let me take you over to show you that, and then we're going to get over to the CNC machine and start cutting away. So every time I use this V-carve program, I get a little more confident, and I was able to lay out the switch and the two controls, and then I did the tool path, and it's pretty cool too. So you can, when you draw it, you could then run it on this piece of wood that's on the screen there, and actually rotate the wood around and see if your cuts were as you had planned, and it worked out really well. So I just started my machine going, put that toolpath into the pendant, and it cut it away. So far in my early stages of learning how to use this machine, I'm realizing that everything I use this machine for, I used to do with a template and a pattern bit and a router. So I'm basically trading my skills of making templates, because using template is a piece of cake, there's nothing to it. But I'm trading my skills of making a template for the skills I'm learning using this machine. And I'm cool with that. Somehow using the design software in this machine is teaching me so much about the intricacies of building a guitar that I really feel like I'm becoming a better woodworker, better guitar maker because of it. This has been a really cool experience and a cool journey for me, and I could definitely see where this machine is going to keep a place in my shop and be a part of my woodworking journey. All right, so I am really pleased with the way that came out. My 3 recesses here for my 2 potentiometers and that 3-way blade switch. What I have left where the blade switch goes, I have about 1/8 of an inch of thickness left on the top in this area, and I have about 3/16 of an inch left on the top where my 2 potentiometers go, which I found that works really well. Enough room to get the nuts on there and the washers and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really pleased, and also like the fact that I didn't just make this whole area thin, which would then weaken the top. If that whole thing was only 1/8 of an inch thick right there, that would really weaken the top. So this retains the strength of the top, and it recesses these down where they need to be so they work out well. And now I've always done this before with my router, and I usually do it kind of by eye, and it's a real pain in the neck to do, and it's not nearly as accurate as this. And I normally do it after the guitar is put together too, so I'm reaching that router bit way down in that control cavity to cut these out. So this is just definitely a million times better doing it with the CNC machine. So this is definitely an operation I will do in the future on the CNC. So this thing is ready to get glued together. I've got all my, my chambers routed out. I've got my control wire cutouts. And I've got these guys, and I have one last thing I need to do, and that's I want to paint this control cavity right here. And I'm going to go ahead and paint both sides because I want to. And I also need to paint the back side of the top, right, in the area where the control cavity is, which means I'll do both. Now, in guitars I've built in the past where I've done this, I would always just take my chambering template, I would flip it upside down on the top, I would mark it out, and then I have my line where to paint, because I don't want to just paint the whole thing, because I got to be able to have glue sticking to the nice clean wood here. So I thought, well, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the computer. I'm going to take the drawing that I did for these 2 chambers, flip it over, put it on the back of the front here, on the back of the top, and I will make a little tool path. Then I could take my little engraving bit, which is a 30-degree angled bit, and I'm just going to engrave me a tiny little line around the edge where that thing goes, and then I'll have my marks to paint it to. So it was very simple. It actually took me about 3 minutes to do the thing. I timed myself while I was doing it on the computer. Very easy to do. I now have it plugged into my CNC machine, and let's take this over and get it going. Okay, so we are all painted up with 2 coats of that shielding paint. And I always like to check just to be sure that we have continuity there. And we do. Nice. Let me check this guy over here too. Nice. We're good. We've got that. So I'm going to glue this thing up. I cut me some dowels, some little dowels I'm going to use in the corners. I'm going to do my best to keep the paint away from those corners so the dowels don't get glued in, because I don't want them permanently in there. But so I am going to go ahead and get some glue spreading on this thing. Well, that's about it for this one, guys. I really appreciate you sticking around and checking it out. I'm definitely having my share of ups and downs with this, and it's been a big learning curve, but I'm still enjoying the heck out of every minute of it. Really am. I hope somebody got a little something out of it. Anyway, I hope you all come back and check me out again next week. In the meantime, God bless you, and you all have a wonderful week. We'll see you all in the next one.